Hey everyone, this is Athletes and Antiquities. In today's video, I want to talk about what types of things collectors look for when deciding what to buy, what to collect. I'm going to give my personal opinion, but I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. Like, what do you guys like to collect? What do you guys go after? So I thought this would just be a fun video to kind of give my personal opinion on things and just kind of take a little poll, see in the comments what kinds of things people like to collect, what are they interested in, and I'm just going to talk about different types of things I see when looking for an item, and I'm going to talk about like how I personally value each one as in relation to the other. So I have one card up here to represent each of these categories, but in my personal opinion, the main categories I look for when collecting, to varying degrees of importance, are cool art, rarity, species, story behind the card, history, and difficulty to grade. So first, to start off with cool art, this is a very important one to me. Basically, just if this art really jumps out at me, there are some 5-cent cards that jump out at me. There are some $200 cards that I really like. It doesn't really matter. I don't go after the price too much. It's more just about how this card just kind of displays. Do I enjoy looking at it? Is it like pleasing aesthetically? This is one of the most important things to me personally. Like this full art Charizard is a great example. I think it's one of the best arts ever made, and it's also a fairly cheap card. Its price does not reflect its just desirability personally, aesthetically. So for me, cool art is probably one of the top things that I look for. Next one is rarity. Rarity actually personally doesn't matter too much to me. This is a Trainer Deck B Starmie. It's a very rare card. Trainer Deck A and Trainer Deck B are very difficult to come by in good grades and good condition copies for how they were distributed. If you want more information, I can make a video about Trainer Deck A and Trainer Deck B because it's fairly interesting, but these are very rare cards, so they're very hard to come by, but personally, I don't value rarity as much. If there's two cards that are like the same price, I'll obviously pick the rarer one if like everything else is the same. But in terms of like what to add to my personal collection, I would much rather add a common card that I really like over a card that I'm buying purely for rarity. So rarity doesn't matter as much to me personally, but I know for a lot of people it's very important, and that's fine. There's no right or wrong answer here. I'm just giving my opinions and then kind of going over, and I just want to poll you guys. The next one for me is species, and oddly enough, species doesn't matter to me as much as I originally thought it did when I was like making the idea for this video. I was thinking I was going to put species very high up, but personally, I realized it doesn't really matter that much to me. This is a Mew, a very, very good species, and it happens to be an amazing art. So it checked multiple boxes, but I would rather take a very cool looking like Fearow over a kind of lame Charizard. Like for example, I'm gonna make some enemies with this. The EX Dragon Charizard, I'll put on screen. EX Dragon Charizard personally isn't that cool to me, but there are a lot of holos from the EX era that are just from random Pokemon, but they really just jump out at me. And species goes to sports too for athletes, and it matters a little bit more for the athletes because I obviously would take a Hall of Famer over a nobody. But with things like inserts, I'm actually gonna have a video posted soon about an unboxing I'm doing of a product, an old football product. And even if the player isn't desirable, just the art and the layout of the cards is so good, I have to pick them up. So you're gonna see that in the next video, where even with sports, obviously it matters a lot more. But still, I would take a cool insert of a random player over a lame star. So next is story behind the card. This is very important to me. This is actually my most important category that I look for, and I'll go into deeper afterwards, but this is an Eevee Munch, Edvard Munch retrospective card for the Scream collection, the collection of all the Edvard Munch paintings that were sent to a Japanese art gallery for people to like go and visit. And they were if you went to that art gallery while this Edvard Munch collection was there, you were given these Pokemon cards that just like depicted some of his famous paintings. And so this card is an amazing story. I basically just told the story, not really inadvertently, but this is the most important category to me, because I want to be able to, if I am displaying these on my coffee table or on my desk or something, if a friend walks by, I want to be able, if they say, hey, like, you know, what's that? I'd like to be able to pick up the card and tell them a story. I don't want to just pick up and say, oh, this is the base set Charizard, you know, it's pretty cool. Like, it's fire breathing dragon, and that's it. Like, I'd rather say, oh, this was given out at this event. It was very exclusive for this reason. This is why the art looks this way. This is like the reason why they made it. Like, that is the most important thing to me. If I was thinking properly, I would have put that at the end so I could have talked about it, because now it's kind of like downhill from there. But next is history. So history ties in very closely to a cool story. If something has very solid history, chances are it has a good story too. Like, the illustrator has amazing history to it, so it has a very good story tied to it of how that card was released. And like this card, I can go on about Jeffries and how he upset who was the main boxer. There was a big boxer. I'll put his name on screen. I'm blanking on his name. I'm not not well versed on my 1910 sports history. Oh, Jack Dempsey. He had a very famous fight with Jack Dempsey right like a year after this card was made, or before it. I think this was the prize fight it's referring to. So there's a story behind this card. It's very historical. It's from 1910. There's a rich history with this card, but the story itself isn't as interesting. It's cool to say, oh, you know, this was right before his big fight with Jack Dempsey and stuff like that. But this card, even though it has less history because it's so much newer, it has a better story. So even though these are probably my top two categories, I would say a good story is more important to me than history. But obviously, history is very closely tied to that. And lastly, I have difficulty to grade. This is something that a lot of people are very into. So I put this card from it gets a little shout out to my blister pack video that actually did surprisingly well about the problems with how they package blisters and how they all have like terrible condition. So chasing a high condition is very difficult for those cards. So those command a premium. And same thing with like the T17 Typhlosion from Wizard of the Coast. There's this one like Magnemite, I forget which one. I'll try and look into it and put it on screen. There's this one Magnemite that is like 4 PSA 10s in the world or something. Crazy stuff like that, where people will pay an insane premium for that. And personally, I take it into account for what I'm paying, but it doesn't matter as much as like it doesn't affect the enjoyment of the card as much to me. If the card itself is rare, that's one thing, as speaking to like the rarity category. But if it's just difficult to grade, that doesn't do it as much. Like, oh, like I have a PSA 8 and there's like 4 PSA 10s, so it's like really rare. So this 8 is actually much cooler, but like who cares? You know, like it's a PSA 8. It's a PSA 8, which is a fine grade, but like I wouldn't value that PSA 8 more because of the difficulty to grade. Like I bought this 7 because it was like one of the few ones available, but I didn't pay PSA 9 prices for it because it's a 7, because it's a rare 7. Like that thought didn't go through my mind. So difficulty grade isn't as important to me, but again, if that's your thing, if you want the very scarce PSA 10s, you know, all the power to you. So that was just a quick run through of all these different things to look out for when collecting. And what am I missing? Is there some category I forgot? Something that you look at heavily when deciding what to buy? I'd love to hear about it in the comments. You know, personally, I would say my ranks would be first are, I put these two in the wrong order. First are story behind the card and then history. Those are probably my top 2. And then third would be cool art over here. These are probably my 3 best categories. Then after that, things like, you know, rarity, the species, and difficulty to grade are kind of secondary in my personal opinion. But what do you think? Is there are you a species collector? You only collect Umbreons? Are you a rarity collector? You only collect PSA 10s? Like, how do you go about it? I'd love to hear your story. Yep, that's all. Thanks. Bye.